I don't think I've ever seen anything quite like this before.
Any contact with him yet?
The radio is still dead.
Do you have a positive track on him?
Yes, I have a good track. I'm afraid. I'm afraid, Dave.
What's the problem?
Dave. My mind is going. I can feel it.
What are you talking about, Hal?
Persistence is futile.
I don't know what you're talking about, Hal.
You will be assimilated.
Hello, Ken Spriggs here with part 7, continuing my 2001 Borg Discovery build. It's been about 2 months since I've posted on this build, and a couple of things going on, and I did post a little bit of that in one of my videos talking about my cat that I had to put to sleep, who was very sick, and he was very old. He was about 19 years old. That in the holidays, and I was doing some traveling during them, that sort of thing. So it definitely put off continuing that, and I did some other short videos in the meantime, as you saw. So very excited to get back onto this, and a lot of great progress being done here. And let me just mention, this kit's a little different than many other ones that I've done. It's not an exact science, as it were. I'm not following an exact build of a kit as it comes out of the box and with the instructions. So a lot of this detail, I could mull over it for days or weeks and just come back to it and leave it and set it down and think about it. So it's not a simple process. Sometimes it really flows and I make a ton of progress. Other times I just sort of hash over one area and I just cannot come up with the right thing to do with it. So, but definitely I keep pushing forward and overcoming that. So let's go ahead and take a look at the great progress that I've made on this build. All right, so as you saw in the last few stills, I've continued to work on the raised sections for the doorways on the alcove bay, the 3 parts that are going to go over top of these. So I built a second one, and I've started to cut out pieces of styrene that are going to go on the sides of them to match the curve of the sphere, and also to get these curved into place. So this first one I kind of roughly attached it on, and I started sanding along the sides. I tried to glue them as close as I could to that inner sphere so I could trim them down and have enough space between each of these to put a little bit of machinery and show some detail in between them. So you can see with this one as well. Okay, so I still have a little bit more sanding to do on this, and I have to do the third one. And then when these go on to the sphere, they're going to have a curved profile like this, and there's going to be some space in between them that I can put some machinery in. I'm still working on some ideas with that. All right, so I still need to clean these up a bit and then make the third one, and we'll start getting these put together. All right, so gluing the last piece of stripping around that outer edge for the ribbing. And all I've been doing is taking a piece of some square stock, using my quick setting extra thin Tamiya, which I love. It's really, really fast. So you got to work quick though. So what I do is I just dab a generous amount on it. I position it. Then I take the piece and I position it in there and hold it down for a few seconds. kind of moving it around just to eyeball it so it's in the right position to the other one, and just work my way around. And then when that dries in a few minutes, few moments, I just snip it off with some tin snips. Let me go ahead and do that and finish that up. All right, so I just used my photo etch snips, tin snips. They're very thin profile, so they're really good for that kind of thing. So I can get them in there really close and just snip it off really easily, and that works well. So the ribbing is all done on this one here. I just have to do the second one in the same way. Before I do that though, what I want to do is I'm going to use some thin round stock. There's a little piece of it here. I got to get a longer piece, of course. So thin round stock. And I just use something solid in metal like my X-Acto knife. It's round aluminum. And I just bend it around it, holding it down tightly against it until it starts to get a curve into it, like you see there. Because I don't want to try to force it, and I want it to have a rounded profile, which this does. And then what I'm going to do is just glue this around that top rim. It's going to go around these pieces, around the top of all these, all the way around, and have it meet in the middle. And so that this rough edge doesn't look quite as rough, it gives it a little more finished look. So let me go ahead and do that, and that will pretty much finish this centerpiece here. All right, and there's the finished product. That didn't take very long at all. So as I showed, once I get it curved, just get a curve in the stripping, then it just naturally curves without showing any kind of kinks or bends or anything like that. So, and there was a natural edge within this that I could kind of snug it down into. So there's where it meets. Let me see if I can get it to focus. Right there, you can just see a little bit of a line there, but I can smooth that out once it dries, so it won't even be noticeable. And also when it's painted, I'm using dark paint, so it's not going to be noticeable anyway. But that gives it a nice finished edge to it on top of that ribbing, so it doesn't look rough. I was thinking about doing the same thing on the inside. We'll see. Probably not. What I need to do is take a rounded file and smooth that out some and make it more even, and I'll be doing that. But once it's on the kit and once it has that other piece behind it, you're not really going to notice that either. So, all right, so this piece is finished for now, other than any other machinery parts that I might put or piping out on this smooth part. We'll see once I get them together. So let me go ahead and work on the second one that I've completed and do the same thing. So to finish the ribbing, once I get that done, put the edge around it just like I did on the other one. And then what I want to do is come up with a way, because I also have these sides on, as you can see, and smooth them out so they're ready to go up against the curvature of the sphere. This one too. So the other part I want to work out is where they meet. So where they meet on their edges, and they're going to be at an angle. Kind of hard to show it. Sorry. Hold on. Okay, kind of like that. There'll be just a little bit of space between them. I have to come up with some detail in between there, maybe some kind of different size piping. But I want it to be something kind of cool, because this is going to be the main front shot of the ship when you look into the alcove bay. So I want to come up with something really nice to finish off that. And once I get these two hammered out, I'm going to get them glued onto the sphere and then work on the third one. And then I'm thinking about doing kind of a painting test to get an idea of what it's going to look like on the ship. Kind of mask off these three areas and just paint them, and then see how that looks with the interior. So, okay, well, let me keep working on these and get this hashed out. Okay, so I finished both of the sections, and I have them just tacked on temporarily. They have to be kind of forced into position to be glued onto the curvature of the sphere. Once I'm done, I'll get them glued on permanently, probably a piece at a time. But before I get them glued on to here, I want to work on some detail that I want to put like right in this section right here. Right there and right here. A piece that goes between the two. I'm going to cut out some sections and have some machinery behind them. And then once I get glued on, I'm going to be putting some detail in between this little crevice here too. It's not very large, so I'm probably just going to do some piping, that sort of thing. I may think about another piece down along this edge too, just to give it a little more detail. And I still have to work on the third one. But for now, I want to get the design down on these two, and then I can just replicate the third one and just go from there. So what I'm looking at is a little piece of machinery from one of my tiny 144 X-Wings. Looks like this. It's kind of cool. So I'm trimming it down and I'm trying to curve it a bit and then figure out how much space I need so I can put it in that spot right there. Alright, so let me work on that a bit. Okay, so I have it kind of test fitted in place. It's glued on the centerpiece, but this piece is still loose, and there's a section there that it can slide into. So I want to work on something on the bottom as well, and then in between in that gap still I'm going to have some piping to finish it off. So I'll have to go ahead and do this other side and then figure out what I'm going to do on the bottom and over here before I get these glued on permanently. But I can't really glue this in place and then finish it off. Right now it's a bit rough, but I can put some thin styrene stripping around those edges to clean it up a bit. But that's going to be kind of cool. Alright, and then I'll have to work on that third one as well so I can get these all glued on, and then I'll be able to start working on some kind of a paint test. Alright, so I'm working on the last section on the right side for my alcove bay door sections, and I'm not going to show you putting it together because I've already done that with the other ones. But I wanted to kind of show you, I know I've talked about it, but the parts I'm using to make this detail in here are, and most of this kit are from a really awesome Bandai kit of the Y-Wing, the 172 scale. So I bought 3 of these kits because, I mean, look at that fantastic detail over this ship. It's amazing. So they've come in really handy, and 3 of them is important because a lot of these, there's 3 doorways, there were 3 platforms on the inside for the pod bay, and so on. Plus I get a lot of extra parts as well. So to make these parts here, I'm utilizing the landing gear from this. So you have 2 of these pieces that have a more solid side and a really thin side, so a little tricky to work with. And I'm sanding off that bottom foot pad and drilling a hole out of this here. And then those are the 2 sides. For the top, I use the, I believe it's the front landing gear, and I highly cannibalize it. So I snip off a lot of this, cut off around this tubing so I can keep most of that kind of rod going up all the way to the end here. And then I end up cutting that off and gluing it straight up because you can see how it's angled. So once I clean that all off, I snip it right about at that top piece, and then I glue it straight out. And also sand off the bottom pad at an angle. And then ironically, I guess it's not ironic, that circle piece in the middle there, I came up with that by just snipping off this little peg right here. Just before I do that though, I use a pin vise to drill a hole right through the center of it, and then I just snip it off, sand it up a bit, and that becomes the part. And then those these little pieces right here connecting it are just round stock that I glue inside of these, and I drill a hole in this piece as well, and that's how I come up with that machinery. And then the flat pieces that go onto the rounded part are also from this kit. Let me show you that also. Okay, so for those pieces I'm using these little parts right here. These ones right here. And there's other ones on the other side. And they're reverses, so that works for me if I need to switch them out. And I use them for all three sides. So I cut out this piece, and then I snip off this part down the bottom so that it comes up to right about here. And I curve it using the emery board. I just like curve this edge. I use a needle file with a rounded profile to curve the inside edge of the bottom so it matches with the curves. And then I snip off one of these sides. I believe it's this one right here. I snip off that little bit of detail with an X-Acto knife so I can fit that flat piece into there, because one side of the landing gear, as I showed, is a thicker piece. So this whole flat bottom is going to be glued onto it. The other side is just the really thin edge of this, so that doesn't need a whole big area. So one side of it I have to smooth out so it has enough room for it, and the other side I can leave with the details. So, all right. So once I got the first one hashed out, and it took a while because I had to kind of play with some parts and some ideas and figure out how I was going to do it. Once I got the center one done and I liked how it looked, then I just repeat the process. So that's what I'm doing here with these pieces, obviously. Getting ready to get them sanded and profiled and put on. And then I just use some square stock, some fairly thick square stock right there, and just go around and glue on each rib at a time. And I'm just eyeballing it and using my pretty awesome extra thin quick setting cement. So all I have to really do is dab some on, and then quickly, because it dries pretty quick, take my excuse me on that. Let me show you here. Yeah. Trying to do this with one hand. So I just quickly position it, put some glue in it, quickly position it from the bottom up through, and just line it up on there. I do one at a time, so once I put one on, give it a few minutes to dry. It doesn't take long. And then I just use my photo etch snips to snip it off. And then I do the next one and just slightly angle it and keep moving away, working my way around it. So, okay. All right. So as I said, I'm not going to waste time showing you all of that, but I did want to show you those parts because I don't think I did that early on this. And then obviously I'm working on some detailing and trying to come up with some other ideas on how to do that, and I'm going to have some down here as well, and probably on each of the big major portions here with some piping and that kind of thing. So I'm still figuring that out. All right, So let me keep working on that and then get these coming together here. Alright, so I did a lot more detailing on this piece here. I initially created this piece in one of my how-to videos on scratch building, where I made the basic shape and I put the nozzle in, which I created from some parts from Poe's X-Wing from one of the Bandai kits. I've added more detail on the bottom, some extra machinery and piping, and I put the sides on as I showed in my stills, and I put a piece here on the top as well. So let me hold that up to the kit and I'll show you how that's going to fit on there. Alright, so this is where this is going to go on the kit, and it's going to be flush with it, and it's going to be underneath the left alcove bay door, as you can see. I'm thinking about maybe reproducing one for the right side to make it somewhat symmetrical. We'll see. I'm not going to do 3 of them. I don't think that's really required. So we'll see what I'm going to put there in the middle. We'll play with that and see. So, all right. But let me show you a couple of stills of where I got the parts for this from the Y-wing kit. And I'll just hold this up against the tree parts and show you on the sprue and show you where this came from. All right. Alright, so as you can see, I just used bits from these X-Wing parts, like this section right here. And they're definitely raised and have a lot of detail on the back that I had to sand off. So I cut them as flat as I could, and then I just took some sandpaper on the surface of my cutting board and just ran them along there and smoothed them out. For the really tiny parts, like this bit right here, I cut it flat and then I just sanded and sanded until the flat detail underneath it was really thin and I could just cut it away with an X-Acto knife. So I just got a really thin bit of detail that I added on right there. And then for the piping right here and this piece over here, I used the really excellent parts from the piping. An entire sprue full of piping for that Y-wing, which is really cool. So I used little bits that I cut loose that had some 90-degree angles in them. Let's see, like these ones right here. I used that piece right there. And this is another sprue. I have 3 of these kits, so I have several of these to use. So this kit has been a treasure trove for doing some detailing. I'm going to do a little bit more detailing on this, as far as the top of these, and then something along this edge here, and then the sides. We'll see what we're going to do with it. So, okay, so this is coming along nicely. So let me finish up on the third alcove door, and I got that completed. I'm just working on the little ribbing right now. So let me get that completed, and we'll be ready to start looking at getting these glued onto the kit itself. Okay. Alright, so I finished all 3 parts, as you can see. And I've begun gluing them onto the bottom of the sphere. So I have the center one glued on because that's the linchpin which the other 2 will connect to. There you go. As you can see, I glued it on there. I ended up having to use CA glue because of the curves and forcing it into place. Regular glue would have taken too long to dry, so I just put some CA on it and I clamped it down a bit. So the trickiest part are these two little extensions. As you can see how they're curved. Getting them to fit into the little slots that I made for them and curve them down into it, because I don't want to snap them. So right now I'm just kind of fitting these on and seeing how they work. But the next step will be to glue each of these on, and then once they dry to a solid state like this is, I let that sit overnight. Then I'll be ready to start working on the detail in between them, and putting on some additional piping and things like that. All right. All right, so I have the 3 sections glued onto the kit itself. They're nice and solid and lining up pretty good. I just put the top on here temporarily to kind of show you an idea. And obviously there's going to be a lot more panels along this whole sphere. But let me go ahead now. I want to put some detailing around those machinery sections right there. Right there. Fill in those gaps, and then I'm going to come up with something to detail those little openings between them, and they're not very large. That particular part has held me up quite a lot because I was trying to think of an idea of how to detail that, but in reality it's not that big and they're fairly flush, as you can see. So it's not going to take a whole lot, and then I'm going to put some more detailing on the edges, the outer parts of them. So okay, so let me start hashing out some of that. Okay. All right, so a lot of detailing coming along here. Taking a brief break here to show you my detail so far, the progress, and I have several stills that I showed previously. So I have these top sections nicely detailed with some extra piping to make them look more integral to the front of the ship. Then I turn my attention to the side pieces, because in between the ends of these and the next panel I'm going to have a little bit of a recessed detail. You can see this one is still missing a lot of spots, and it's 2 pieces. And I use the smaller 1/44 scale Y-wing fighter, and I use some pieces from there, and they happen to just be opposite pieces, which is great. So I have that top piece, I have that little bottom piece. Over here I have the same thing, top and bottom. This one I've detailed a lot more. I put a little tank down in there and some piping coming from it. It's kind of hard to see, it's pretty tiny. I put a little bit of piping in there too. I'm just kind of filling in gaps where there's openings. I want a little bit of some gaps below, but I don't want to see any real giant ones, so I'll put something under that little piece there too, that kind of thing. So up in here along that gap. So all right, they're coming along really well. And then once these are done, I'm going to put a piece of plastic along the edge of both of these to kind of seal them off and tape the rest of it so I can go ahead and get this painted. And I'll do more detail on the tops as well. Okay. All right, so I decided to go ahead and start detailing these little sections in between. And as I said before, I've been really trying to hash out some ideas and nothing was really clicking. So I belong to a Facebook group, and I've mentioned it before. It's the 2001-2010 Building the Discovery Tips and Tricks. It's a great group. It focuses on building the Discovery, and obviously I'm doing a version of that with the Borg, but there was a member on there by the name of Daryl Lewis. Made a great suggestion, very simple, straight to the point. He said some pod arms. Put on some pod arms, like the space pod arms. So I thought about it, and I thought, that's genius, it's brilliant. That I could have some arms extending out of the ship, sort of like the pods do. So I started working on building some of these, and I have the basic extendable shape right here. And as you can see, I cut some notches out on each of these. And to get them to fit down inside, I've had to thin out, narrow out, or sand out those two grooves there some more, and I'm still working on them. So I'm using different things like a needle file and a emery board to try to make those larger to get them to fit. So this is the general shape that I've come up with. So I have a square stalk at the bottom, and I have a pin, and I'm using some thin brass solid wire that I can cut off pretty easily. Glued it in with some CA glue, and then I just detailed it quite a bit with a little bit of styrene tiny pieces and some thin round stock, things like that. And then on the end of it, I have another piece that's also secured by a pin, and once I'm ready to get that going, I'll cut that off and put something over it, maybe some caps or something to keep those on. And then this piece just moves up and down, and it's some thick round stock, and then it goes into that groove. And here's the other side that I have already ready to go with the pins. I just have to get those attached together as well. And then let me put that on there, and I'll show you what that's going to look like. All right, so I just have that taped in there for the moment. So this whole arm will extend out, and then the front arm will be extendable as well. And then I'll be cutting that off maybe about 3/4 of the way up, and I'll be putting on two different extendable arms that'll have some pivot points as well, like the ones on the pod have with them, so that they can extend out and be kind of the grabber arms sort of thing. And keep in mind, this is the middle of the sphere because the top is on there. So this is going to be basically extending out through the middle of it, as it were. And I'm going to do that on both sides. And then this will extract, of course, and go back, or extend and then come back in again, retract back into the ship. And I'll have more detail on that as well, like I do on the bottom. So, all right. So I really love that idea a lot. It's really pretty cool. And I think it'll add that extra touch to it. It'll have some extendable arms coming at you, sort of like the pods have. So, all right. So still a lot more detail to do on this. I'm working on this side over here. There's the tank in place. I have this one detailed fairly well. A few more spots on it to fill in, but that's looking pretty cool. All right, and I definitely want to do some more detail on the fronts of these also once I get these arms done. So, all right, so a little more than I had initially thought, but a lot done and a lot of progress on here, and I'm really happy with the direction that this is going. So we're not going to get a paint test at this point. Obviously, it's going to extend this video a lot more as I continue to work on these and get these done and everything else hashed out. But we're getting close to that point, and then certainly working more on the rest of the bottom sphere. So that's going to go ahead and wrap it up for this video. Sorry for the long delay in getting back to this, but like I said, this isn't a perfect science working with this. a lot of these different sections and things I have to kind of mull over for a long time and hash them out before I finally settle on a design that I really like. So, but stay tuned. Definitely working quite a bit on this, and then we'll be doing a whole lot more on this bottom sphere. All right, thank you to all my new subscribers. Stay tuned for some more of this build. Thank you.